All right, the Shock Pod is alive.
It's alive! Enter the Shock Pod at your own risk.
Presented by Horror Shock Media. This is a horror punk and shock rock podcast, hosted by Reverend Chad Wells.
We're here for episode 3 of the Shock Pod podcast. I am the host, Reverend Chad Wells. I help run Horror Shock Records. I'm the guy that you talk to when you deal with the label, and I'm in the band The Creepy Crawlers. And I'm joined here by some friends today, some who I have met in person and some who I have not. I'll start with those who I have not met in person yet. I've got Pumpkin Guts from a little ways south of where I'm at, down in Kentucky, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
And I've got Olive and the Werewolf from Pumpkin Guts. Say hi, guys.
Hey.
And from Pretty with the Lights Out, just played a show with Pretty with the Power Out, which was the acoustic version of Pretty with the Lights Out. Nate Laugh. Say hello, Nate.
How you doing?
So, I would, you all would be people that I would want to talk to on a horror podcast anyway, a horror rock podcast, which is what this is. But we've got a big reason and excuse for doing it. We've got a show coming up together, and I am super, super duper excited about it. Nate, you are the promoter of that show, am I right?
Hell yeah. Horror Punk Bash in Indianapolis. This is going to be the second one.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about the so you did one last year. Who all was on that? How'd that go?
Yeah, so we did it last year, and we had Pumpkin Guts for year 1, who are returning for year 2. And then we had Won't Stay Dead from Chicago. They did that one as well. And that was the first live Pretty with the Lights Out show. So I played guitar for an act out here, Adam Stoner. He's a tattoo artist. So did good amount of live shows with him as a guitarist. But this was the first Pretty show that had got put together. And it came together from just looking for a place to book Pretty and was not getting really my foot in the door anywhere. So it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to put my own show together. And that was the start of it. And then, of course, you play one show and then that's when people start banging down the door like, hey, all right, let's book you. So no problem getting booked now, but now I just want to keep it rolling. So we had a good time last year and want to keep doing it.
Super awesome. Well, I'm excited to get the invite to play this year. Won't Stay Dead will be a hell of an act to try to replace. So a year since you started playing live. Pumpkin Guts, how long have you all been playing live?
Since the end of October of 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not too much difference in there. Creepy Crawlers also sort of like I'm an old man and I've been at it for a long time, but the Creepy Crawlers is really like, kind of a new thing for me. And we also are approaching, I think, a year or just a little over of playing live ourselves. So
you've got a lot under your belt with jackalopes and stuff, but
yeah, I did it for a long time. Yeah, I always joke like if there's a horror punk bandwagon, like I helped build one of the wheels of it a long time ago. I was one of the people who made the looking like the freshest big boy a look in the horror punk scene back then. But yeah. Just trying to do new stuff now, it's really cool to be playing with both of your bands. I'd like to get a little bit of history of both of you. It's your stories for both bands are kind of, you hear a lot of stories like them, but they're also very individual and sort of very much their own thing. I like the things that make us all sort of individuals in our scene, whether it be our town, the lack of a scene in our town, or the lack of belonging to that scene and creating our own thing. Nate, like you said, having a hard time getting booked right away. So we got to go DIY and find ways to get it done. Pumpkin Guts, what's the origin story? Well, first of all, this is two-pronged. I'm going to roll two questions up in one. The real true origin story, like kind of where's the band start and how and why? And then the second one is, do you all, because you have characters in your band like the Creepy Crawlers, do you have a backstory that is like your mythology, that whether the fans know it or not, like our band, the fans don't really know our origin story, but we share it with each other to like keep ourselves in the thing. Do you guys have anything like that? And yeah, sorry for the long convoluted question. It's early. I'm only like a third of the way into my Red Bull.
um, so like, Pumpkin Guts kind of just started as a name for like I came up with it a very long time ago, and I wanted to write songs about the scary stories I tell in the dark, because I love those stories so much, and you don't really see a lot of people doing much with those. Like everybody's all like goosebumps, goosebumps, and I was like, I like, goosebumps is okay, but I always like scary stories I tell in the dark more.
Oh, and
And
the art's way cooler. I
yeah,
agree 100%.
yeah, and it's like ghosts and dead people and stuff, and like so much like monsters and whatever. So we started out acoustic, and it was just the two of us when we first started. And then I don't know if do you know who the Renfields are?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the lead singer of the Renfields kind of like took an interest in us, and kind of through him being confident in what we were doing, that's sort of when we like decided to try to put together like a full band. And so I recruited somebody that I went to high school with to play guitar for us, and then the werewolf remembered somebody that he used to play in another band with. We got him to come in and do bass.
And then the first EP that we released, like the Small Town Ghost Stories, it was just the three of us. It was me, Olive, and the original Scarecrow. So that was like pre full band.
Yeah.
So that was.
And then so after the Void joined, we were having trouble finding a drummer, and he was like, he basically was like, my cousin plays drums. He's a lot younger than all of us, but maybe we could get him to come in. And then so we got him to come audition, and he was great. So then that's our drummer, our Skelly boy now.
That's awesome. And similarly, Creepy Crawlers and Pretty with the Lights Out both started as kind of writing and recording projects too. And the bug hits you to play live, and you can't. Do you guys feel like a difference? Like, do you feel like it was a different band at the beginning than what it is now? Has it become a new thing, or is it just more? Is it just a stranger beast than it once was? Do you know what I mean?
It definitely has turned out differently, I think, than what we originally had planned. Because I think our original plan was to keep it like more folky. Like that's why we were doing acoustic stuff. Like that was the whole idea. Was like we're going to do like a more folk punk with like a horror twist to it. And as we started adding, like once we started releasing the EP turned more like pop punk, I guess, and that's probably just due to our influences of things.
Yeah.
And then our lead guitar player at the time, like he added I don't even know what you would call it.
He was really into like Japanese metal and stuff.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Like video game soundtracks and stuff. So I think he just added a completely different element to everything that we had, and it just transformed. And then once we added the Void, he has reshaped a lot of our stuff. So it's you can definitely tell the difference between the original EP and then the full length album, Death, the Devil, and Dismemberment. Like the influences that the Void, like that was a lot of his influences in that.
That's awesome. I love to see things grow like that and sort of like organically become the thing that they're going to become.
Yeah.
That's super cool. And both of your bands, you guys are both working with my buddy Dan at We Are Horror Records over in merry old England, right? Is that right, Nate? You guys are.
Dan sucks. No.
Hi, Dan.
Yes, he's awesome. He's been real good for pushing Pretty for sure. So
Dan, full transparency, our band was on the label and Dan went through some stuff and the label kind of paused, and that's where Horror Shot kind of came from, was us and our little crew said like, we really love what Dan Phillips was doing with We Are Horror, from like pushing it from a fan's place rather than there's a ton of labels that are just some guy who's trying to get rich off of everybody else's creativity, or there's labels where it's just the band pretending to be the label or whatever. And that's totally cool. I've done that my entire career. I've always kind of had labels that my bands were on and stuff. But Dan, I think helped breathe some new life into our scene 100% by coming at it from a pure fan's perspective. He wants to own the cool merch and see the cool stuff happen, and he's really like championed the right bands, I think, and his comps are great. Like his compilations are obviously a labor of love. Like he drives himself absolutely crazy working on those things. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, kudos to Dan and kudos to you guys for working with him. Nate, with Pretty, something like you know, working from home, putting together this thing that sounds like a real band, and then putting it out on some labels, whether it's just some comp tracks at first or whatever, and then it becomes you know, sort of a real band. What are some of the struggles in that, and like what I don't know, what are you doing to approach it now in the modern world rather than like, you know, when you're 19 or 20 years old, it's like this is your crew and you hang out with these guys all the time, but now you run a business, you do all this other stuff. And you know, it's like you might have to go as far as like hiring hired guns to back you up or whatever. Tell me a little
Yeah,
bit about
that's
the Pretty with the Lights Out sort of trials and tribulations and successes.
yeah. I mean, I had been in bands back in Denver for since I was 14 years old. I think we would play like we'd have big X's on our hands, and we wouldn't be allowed inside until it was time to play, and then they rushed us out, and we were out the door. So I'd been doing it for quite a while, up until my early 20s, and then had a baby, and that puts the brakes on things pretty quick. And it just being in a band is hard, especially with, you know, trying to find 3 to 4 other people that have the same kind of mindset and the same drive and everything, that you then get along with and can be in the same room with for a while and not be button heads. So it's difficult. So, you know, Pretty was kind of like Pumpkin Guts, where it's like I'd been sitting on that name for a really long time, to the point where I had registered the domain name in early 2000s and then let it go. It's like, I'm not doing anything with this. And then finally decided to bring it back kind of within the last few years. But yeah, it came from, you know, I was playing guitar for my buddy who he was recording with a producer. And I kind of saw, like, you know, I'm a software engineer, and we would go into these recording sessions, and I laid down bass for a couple of his tracks. And it's like, oh, I can do that. This doesn't seem like anything. Just need some equipment and need some know-how. So taught myself how to do that. But yeah, I originally I didn't want to be the singer. I just wanted to write the music and wanted somebody else to come in and do something. I actually wanted a female singer for Pretty originally, and none of my friends wanted to do it, which then goes back to the finding people thing. So
Yeah.
went, just decided, okay, I'll just do it myself. And recorded a song. It's like, okay, that worked. Let's keep going. But yeah, bringing it then to live was kind of difficult because you're just finding people to play your music, which is fine. And I've got hired guns that I've kind of, they learn the songs, they know the set, and that's that. So finding that has been a challenge for sure. Cause I pay them for gas. I pay them for shows, which leaves really nothing on my end. So it's just constant outflow of money, just as we're doing it. And then finding the right drummer has been challenging for sure. I'm on drummer number 4 already. I'm turning into Spinal Tap over here. So that's I've kind of realized my flaw was I was looking for punk drummers. It's like I need a metal drummer that wants to back it off and play punk. That's really what I need. So I think I've got maybe the guy now. We will see. but yeah, like paying for them, paying for so the Dayton show that I just did with you last weekend. That was a scheduling thing. The drummer just wasn't going to work out. I had already committed to that show. I didn't want to back out. So it's like, well, what do I do? You make it happen somehow. So the options were play with a backing track, which I have that ability because I record all my own music. So I have the stems for everything and can lay out a track just like I want. Or do it acoustic. So opted for the acoustic side. And, at the end of the day, playing something, even playing with a backing drum track is better than not playing at all. So you do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the DIY spirit, the kind of punk rock spirit that's in our, it's funny you mentioned getting a metal drummer to play or whatever. There's so much genre smear and blur and things aren't, it's not the 80s anymore where it's like if you have a certain haircut, I don't talk to you or whatever. Like it's not that world anymore. That we all have the internet, we all have a lot of influences and stuff. But it's interesting growing up. I've been playing music again, not to harp on the old guy thing, but I'm 30 years into playing live music. And at the very beginning, there was a giant difference between a heavy metal person and a punk rock person
for sure.
in what they expected from a show, how they expected to be treated at the show. A punk rock band shows up if there's one mic and no mic stand. That's the PA. We're fine. If a heavy metal band would show up and there's not 6 monitors and whatever, it was trouble. I'm sure that those differences still exist in different like cliques and groups in the scene or whatever. But what I call like our current horror punk scene, I call it horror punk, but there's so much other stuff going on, like Pumpkin Guts coming from a folk perspective, based on children's literature, and other bands coming from like I'm working on the newest Shockwaves comp right now, which Pretty with the Lights Out has a track on. It's a very metal comp. Like when I listen to it, there are a lot of guitar solos. Younger and older musicians alike on the comp are coming from a place of like not worrying so much about the old traditions of it's punk, it can't have a guitar solo or a crazy acoustic intro or whatever. Like it's a neat time to be in the scene for me because I really did go through a lot of time where there was a lot of like if you're not from the right town, you don't have the right haircut, you don't have the right jacket, whatever. It was so judgmental and kind of backwards and silly. Coming from that perspective, all of our bands that we're sharing on the screen here, the Creepy Crawlers, Pumpkin Guts, and Pretty with the Lights Out, all have things that make us again sort of individuals in the scene, based on not just our sound but kind of who we are. My band is like ranges from 20 years old to 50 years old. So we've got this crazy broad spectrum of, male and female and broad ages and whatever. Is the scene now, do you guys feel like it's more accepting? And I know Pumpkin Guts, you guys might not remember the old like asshole scene that I'm talking about. If you do, you know what I mean, chime in or give your perspective on it. Do you think that it's more open now? Do you think that things are progressing because of the modern internet and all of that? Or do you guys still find that there's like sections and closets of like exclusionism or?
Yeah, I mean, horror punk is pretty broad for sure. Like all three of us we're all kind of labeled as horror punk, but all three of us sound drastically different. And but even back in the days of playing, if you didn't show up with a 4x12 guitar cab, you were a fucking loser. It's like no, you can't be on stage. I don't even bring a guitar cab anymore. I bring an amp modeler. It's like, well, if I can't get right into the PA, I really can't do the show because I'm not lugging a cab around anymore. So those kinds of like the way people look at you there has already kind of evolved of like, well, there's that meme now of like if that bass player looks like this, you're gonna die in the pit, and it's always some fucking George Costanza or whatever. So.
But like the biggest thing I think is like overall, I feel like we're pretty accepted wherever we go play at and whatever. But I'm typically perceived as a girl or whatever. And these men, like a lot of older men, feel like they're entitled to tell me how I should be on stage.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it doesn't happen to anybody else in our band. It only happens to me. So I know that it has to be because of that. Like, I don't know what else it would be. I even had one person that had the audacity to tell me that our band would be better if we changed our name to Political Science.
That's kind of weird. That's
Yeah.
that's you're sharing an opinion that has just that's
that's
wildly just an opinion.
That's a very left field. Like
That's great.
That makes zero sense.
It's interesting you say that though, and I wish one of the ladies in my band were here, because I hear that from both of them, and I don't experience that. I've never had a guy walk up to me and say, if you used a different kind of guitar, it would this, or if you did this, or have you ever heard of this, like trying to educate me. Like the women in my band are constantly either being just looked at as they're probably a girlfriend or a wife, and like they don't, the sound person doesn't ask them questions about what they need, or it's like I and me being the old dad guy, I just step in and just do everything. Like I have that, I do have some of that old whatever patriarchal masculine training of like, I will carry all of the things, it's fine, let them be. But like it is weird that that's a thing in the scene, where now, like, I mean, number one, women have been a part of rock and roll since the beginning. Number two, we're in a world where that's not even, we're excluding so many people by even just talking about who's a man or who's a woman or what. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of a weird time.
And like, there's been plenty of bands that we've played with that the guys in those bands, they don't really move around on stage a lot. They just kind of stand up there, they play their songs, whatever, and nobody says anything to them. Like I see them get like, get told like, oh, that was a great show, good job guys. But then I get people telling me, like, these dudes are like, oh, you don't move around enough, you need to channel more of like a Davey Havoc energy and like stuff like that. And I'm like, I mean,
well,
the
I will
person
say
that played
we all
before me was like a stump,
Yeah. No, that's a thing. I will say we all need to channel more Davey Havoc energy at all times. Yeah, it's really interesting. So do you guys have, my family, all of my family's from Kentucky and Tennessee. Do you guys have trouble like down there with people understanding what the hell you're even doing? Like, I know just being in a normal rock and roll band, when I would talk to my family about it, like as a young guy, they would be like, now, like, what kind of music is it? Is it like Elvis or like Leonard Skinner, or you know what I mean?
I feel like a lot of people around here don't know what we're doing. Like, you even mentioned like it, like punk, and they're like, oh, the screaming stuff, and I'm like what?
Yeah.
But I feel like you get more questions about that than I do.
Yeah, my parents don't understand it. Questions like, why do y'all wear the masks and stuff? Like, I don't know. Why not? So yeah, I mean, and then like they don't fully understand the music that we play either. They also think that it's screaming, and all of his vocals is anything but screaming.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't understand it. So I don't even think they actually even listen to it. So they don't understand.
I think Will Smith wrote a whole song about this, actually. So speaking of all of that, live, when people come and see us all, what's the date again, Nate? I have none of my notes here.
Saturday, October 5th.
So that's awesome. You don't know either.
I think it's Saturday, October 5th. That sounds right.
Well, when people come to that show, they should expect from my band actually a lot of screaming, but also some singing and some intense performance. How would you wrap it up for the average person? Now, the average person is not necessarily going to be listening to this podcast. This podcast is going to be a lot of people who know what we know. But for the average listener, for the mom or dad or the aunt or the uncle or the person who's just like, y'all, I really liked Rob Zombie when I saw him. Should I come see your show? Like, what do you have to tell those people? Like, how do we wrap that up and either the elevator sales pitch or the hype
nice
ball?
little bow. Yeah, that's it's definitely a broad show, just like the first one was. Pretty and Pumpkin Guts are very, very different. And then Won't Stay Dead was kind of a different element there too. And then Creepy Crawlers, just seeing your guys' energy last week was crazy. It's like, okay, yeah, it was great. It was like that's what I was hoping for. So it's definitely a broad show. Like I said, horror punk is pretty good term anymore. Like it doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's basically bands that sing about horror movies and whatever else, like with some kind of edge, and that's pretty much it. Like there's no real definition to it anymore. So yeah, I think it's going to be whether you like kind of the pop punk stuff, which Pumpkin Guts is really hitting hard. I like that sound a lot. And then Pretty's kind of a metal punk infusion. And then Creepy Crawlers is kind of, you got more of the thrash kind of, you're kind of in the thrash and on the metal side too. And then with the punk elements coming in. So,
absolutely. Our whole shtick is like 80s satanic panic. We just want to be everything that my parents were scared about in the 80s, which is probably not scary to people that much anymore, but it's like the pepper on my French fries, or like it's just a little something extra.
Yeah.
But I'm getting ready to be 51 years old, so I really still think I try to remember Motley Crue before they were troublesome and problematic, if that exists. But and things like Metallica before they were a dad band or whatever. But we also bring in a lot of weird influences from like psychedelic rock and stuff like that. But all three bands, I think, definitely I think bring a visual element and bring a even Pretty with you guys don't costume up or wear any kind of grease paint or anything like that, but like the act of sort of hitting those instruments hard and pushing yourself that hard is there's still a visual element to that. You see a person straining and sweating up there doing something you're not doing, and that is a show.
Oh, and I sweat profusely.
What's the venue like? I have not been to this venue. What can you guys Pumpkin Guts, have you played there more than the one time?
No, we just played there the once.
What did you guys think of the spot? Does it feel like a good venue?
Yeah, it's like one of the better places that we played at last year for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a little place. It used to be owned by somebody else. It was kind of a shithole in Indy. And then that was my understanding, because I moved to Indy from Denver in 2020. And when we came out here, people were like, yeah, you don't play HoosierDome, you'll get shot out there or whatever. And they're like, it's crap. You don't want to play there. So then one of the bands, when I was playing with my buddy, we ended up booking a show there with the guitarist from Breaking Benjamin, which I don't really follow much of newer music, but he's a fan. So we played a show there with him, and he's like, oh, this is a good venue. This place got really cleaned up. So some lady bought it. She lives upstairs from it. And you kind of just, we rent it out. So, I'm paying the fee to play there, to reserve it that night. But it's an all ages place, which there's not many of those in Indy. It's got great sound. They don't have a bar, which kind of some people don't like, but I don't mind. I don't drink, so I don't mind it.
Our band's sober. Everybody in our band is sober.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
I hope the crowd feels that way, but
yeah. So it can be harder to get people there on a Saturday night just because of that. But it is down in pretty hopping part of Indy, so there's no shortage of things to walk to after the show or whatever. So it's a nice venue. I like it.
It's going to be the Creepy Crawlers' first time into Indy. I really built the Jackalopes there. If you know much about the Jackalopes, we were from Dayton, but we really like built ourselves outside of there. Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, a lot of Indy actually, for that matter. We were really we were like part of the pop punk scene, but we had like a horror and sleazy B movie kind of thing. So like that was just in nearness to us. Indy was really into that, and so was Michigan for that matter. So we kind of built our band elsewhere, and I just feel a weird kinship and home in Indianapolis. So even though I never am quite sure what time it's going to be when I get there.
Yeah, Indy really belongs in Central Time, not Eastern. But yeah, there's not a lot of horror punk in Indy. It all exists up in Fort Wayne with Grave Robber and B Movie Monsters and
yeah, our really honestly the Jackalopes, we came from, there was a band called the Migraines that is basically Grave Robber without costumes and less horror. They had some horror, but they had like sci-fi Martians, and they were kind of like juvenile humor, like songs about boobs and beer and stuff like that. But
that's great.
But our bass player was in that band. They got big. Like they like toured the US constantly, and they were like they were on a label called One Foot Records. It was kind of a big deal in the horror punks, or in the pop punk scene rather, back then. And so like we jumped off of them. So like Fort Wayne was like, a lot of people thought we were from Fort Wayne for sure.
Yeah,
Fort Wayne has there's the Low Life crew out there. Like there's like a whole gang of miscreants that used to come to the shows, and you would be happy to see them, but also kind of bummed because they were going to spill beer on everything and wreck stuff and whatever. But that was cartoon punk rock back then. So,
well, the other interesting thing that I just realized, you said you're 51.
Yeah,
I'm 41. So I don't know how old anybody
I'm
in Pumpkin Guts
31.
are. You okay?
Oh, that's weird.
I was going to say, I knew you had to be quite a bit younger than me. So you've got in this one show this decade gap of between each band bringing their own influences from each kind of where we grew up at. So just further enforcing the kind of the wide spectrum of the sounds from each.
So one of the things I've been asking people about on these shows is sort of relates to what you're talking about here. Though we're decades apart in ages, there's something about, black t-shirts and rock and roll and monster movies or scary books that all feels like it goes together to me. And I think that those of us that play music relative to this, obviously we feel that way. So I call it the peanut butter and the chocolate moment, which, for you pumpkin guts, you might be too young to remember, but when Reese's Cups first came around, the commercial was somebody accidentally puts a Hershey bar in a Jif container, and they go, "You got your chocolate in my peanut butter. You got your peanut butter on my chocolate." So what was the moment for you where you realized that the chocolate of horror and the peanut butter of rock and roll went together? What was that moment for you, and why does that become a compulsion? Because like your parents are like, why are you wearing a mask? I understand why you're wearing a mask. It only makes sense for you to wear a mask to me. But what's the moment where that clicks in your head and you go like, that's the thing? Pumpkin Guts, you guys take it first, and then Nate, you take it.
I mean, like, I guess the first kind of exposure I had to anything like that was that, and I know it's not horror punk, but the video for Other Side by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, that video feels like Tim Burton, and I was like, that's really cool. Like, I want more things that are like that,
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that was probably, and then I just kind of was seeking out that kind of stuff after that, but it took me a long time to find horror punk. I was quite a bit older, but like me and my brother, when we were kids, listened to a lot of ICP and Dark Lotus and stuff like that.
We
So
had a juggalo at our show with Nate the other night, and the guy was hyping it up. I gotta say, I want more juggalos in the horror punk scene. I don't know what bad rap they've gotten or why, but after every show, he would whoop whoop, and it made me feel really good. So,
I mean,
That was a good- that was a good
very
crowd.
fun crowd.
well, that's the thing though. Like, so you guys are the age where the mall has always had a store where there's Tim Burton stuff, for instance, or whatever. Like, it's always kind of been there in the background as a choice to make. For me, it was kind of like it. I got lucky to find like a Motley Crue record in Kmart while my mom was getting like vacuum cleaner bags or something. It was just a different world then. But like, um, Nate, what was it for you where you kind of decided horror and rock and roll kind of went together?
It was Guar for sure.
Oh yeah, I actually did see that. I did read your pre-interview. 1996 Guar. That's right. You just
Yeah, that was Beavis and Butthead. Like I was fell asleep on the couch, and woke up at like 2 a.m. and Beavis and Butthead was on, and Jack the World by Guar was on. I was like, "What is this?" And I saw that bear trap flopping, and it's like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen." And they've been my favorite band ever since. They they made their B movie kind of movie releases, and they don't get labeled as horror punk ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe occasionally somebody will throw them in. I do every chance I get, but that to me was horror punk. Like they really straddled that line of kind of like punk and metal, and then bringing the horror elements into it. That was definitely my like kind of aha moment of like, whoa, this is cool. I need more of this.
absolutely. I think Guar. It's funny to think about why certain things are horror punk and certain things aren't. And obviously, Guar comes from the punk scene and they're horror oriented. They should be that. But I think the time they existed in, they started before there was there wasn't a term like the horror
Yeah.
punk.
It was just
The Misfits
Misfits
didn't
were
call
all you had.
themselves that. The
Yeah.
Misfits were just punk, and they happened to sing about horror. In the the 90s, we really coined the term, and Guar's already a thing that we all probably liked, but they didn't have the Misfits, even though they toured with the later
Yeah.
era of the Misfits, whatever. They
Yeah, and
didn't
that
have
my introduction to Misfits was right around the same time. I went to go pick up the new Guar album. It was Carnival of Chaos at the time, and American Psycho was sitting right next to it. It had just come out within like a week of each other.
Oh wow.
And I was like, I don't know what's on this, but that artwork alone was what sold me on it. And I had seen the Crimson Ghost, obviously, just even Cliff Burton and Kirk Hammett and stuff,
Yeah.
just wearing those Misfits t-shirts. So it was in my brain of like, I know what this is, but I've never heard it. I don't know what's on here, but I
Yeah.
bought it, and that was the end. They
Pumpkin Guts. So these talks that I'm having with people always devolve into us talking about the Misfits. By your explanation of how you came to be what you are and all of that, were the Misfits even an important band to you? Did you guys pay attention to them at all, or is it like
Yeah, that was your.
Yeah, I mean that was as like a teenager. Like my brother was really big into like punk music and stuff. Like his like favorite bands was like Rancid and like NoFX and stuff like that. And I just remember him having a cassette tape that had like Danzig era Misfits on one side and then Graves era Misfits on the other. And we shared a room together, and I would be on like the top bunk, and it would be like 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd be blasting this music every single night, and I just remember that the Misfits was one of them. And as I got older, it was like I just decided to start breaking into some of that stuff that he was listening to, and the Misfits was obviously one of them. And I wouldn't say I'm like a massive fan of them, but I do enjoy them, and I will say that they were a huge part in what we do. I mean, it's there. Like, it's not necessarily one of our biggest influences in music, but I do enjoy like the theatrics and stuff like that of what the Misfits was. So
I mean, the fact that you're wearing a leather jacket and a skeleton shirt, it's absolutely. I mean that self-identification was kind of started there with the Misfits for sure.
Yeah.
So it's got to be part of what, if we're saying horror punk, it's part of what we're doing somewhere. But it's really interesting to see, like, even for the three of us, Nate finds the Misfits in that like middle era in the 90s. I was there in the 80s as a young kid, first generation skater, like Thrasher magazine, they were always in there and all of that stuff. So like I was but you couldn't find their stuff anywhere. It was pre, like I had to drive out of state sometimes or to other big cities to go and buy like a $30 7-inch or
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of it that got printed in
no,
reality.
no. It's
Yeah.
like I remember finding a copy of Evil Live at like a college record swap thing, and like, I found the Holy Grail. Henry Rollins sings
What?
back up on this. Uh,
My introduction to the Misfits was that thing that Jerry only did the 1950s project or whatever.
Oh, the Mad Monster Party stuff.
I found that at like a Kmart and had no idea what it was, but I thought that the album art was cool and I bought it.
It's so relative to the Tim Burton vibes. Like, yeah, the artwork and the presentation on that, I makes sense why that would have grabbed your eye.
Yeah, he's
for
got
sure.
the Great Balls of Fire cover on there.
Yeah. And so for like a long time, I didn't know what else. I thought that's like all they were. I had no idea. And
That's
then,
awesome.
yeah, in like 2015 or 2016, I started listening to like the actual, like early days stuff. So
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, it's neat that it still always kind of comes back in. There's a lot of stuff that I think, again, on like the Guar subject, there's a lot of stuff that I think should be included in what we do. I think the Tim Burton influence, not non-musical really, other than the Danny Elfman stuff, but like it's a whole vibe and a way of presenting something. I think that is like, it has a visual language that we all steal from a little bit. I think Kiss and Motley Crue and like the dark, scary 80s bands, we all steal from that stuff. The Misfits, you see a lot less of the Guar and stuff like that because I think it takes so much commitment to build all that stuff. Like you don't see maybe like Mac Sabbath or a couple bands like that.
Yeah.
Obviously they're not horror punk bands, but there are a few bands that sort of really have
The art
have
element.
gone there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that have gone there.
Performance art.
But I talk to people like in my generation, for instance, if you said that you were into Mushroom Head or Slipknot or something like that, I would kind of giggle at you. But now, like, that's just as big an influence on, like, so many kids. That's like classic rock now. To me, those are new bands, which is hilarious.
Yep.
But that's like somebody's parents listen to that stuff. You grew up around guys in masks banging on trash cans and screaming. You're gonna go like, well, what else is like that? And you're gonna stumble into the Misfits. You're gonna stumble into stuff like that, which I think that's a really interesting thing to touch on for all of us as artists, as songwriters, and is the fact that like something like the Misfits, that band existed in a very small window of the late 70s, early 80s. They never really rose to fame during their time. They never really got that big during their time. They toured like crazy. So the underground kind of knew them. And you had stuff, but because it was this underground thing that had a good visual presentation, the guys from Metallica had their logos tattooed on them and they covered their songs eventually, or Guns N' Roses eventually covered their songs. And then suddenly it becomes, the Misfits reunion era comes because all of these giant bands of the 80s and early 90s had found the Misfits, and that was their special secret underground band that they, some people like the Subhumans or the Dead Kennedys or Minor Threat, but I really like the Misfits,
Yeah.
And but your bands, Pumpkin Guts, Pretty with the Lights Out, Creepy Crawlers, in 20 years, some mumble rapper kid from the future or whatever is gonna have one of our t-shirts on in whatever the YouTube of the future is, and like some kid's gonna see it and go, what the heck is that and how do I find that? Like, do you think about that at all? Like, is what you're doing strictly the right now, or are you thinking about like how it's going to be perceived in the future?
Yeah,
Nate?
like so I've had this conversation kind of with you in the past of like people will buy a Pretty with the Lights Out shirt without even knowing it's a band because I traveled to tattoo conventions for my
Right.
job, and it's like, well, I may as well try to make some money, and I sell more merch there than I do at a Pretty with the Lights Out show, because people will just walk by and see it, and that's the power of a good logo and a good name, I suppose. People will just walk by and be, that's funny, and here's $25. Okay. And it used to kind of hurt my feelings because I'd be like, well, hey, it's a band. Like, here's the little QR code to go listen to it on Spotify. And they're like, I don't care. It's like, okay, well, cool. I'll just enjoy the shirt. So it would hurt my feelings briefly. But then I was able to like, it's like, well, okay, how many people really wear Misfit shirts and have never heard a single Misfit song? It's like, there's a shit ton of them. So it's like, I'll like when I looked at it from that perspective, it's like, all right, if people are just having an attraction to the name or whatever it is on the shirt, why not? If so it doesn't bug me now anymore. But yeah, I definitely look that's the mentality I look at it now. But who knows what people will do with my crappy shirts in the future. So,
Well, for me, and I want to hear Pumpkin Guts take on this too. For me, one of the things, like I always talk about the jackalopes and stuff, the stuff that I've done in the past, even if I'm not doing the band still, like I feel like I have to carry the legacy of that thing because people do buy our t-shirts at a Goodwill and then they go and find our music or, whatever. Somebody's uncle, like the werewolf was saying, your older brother might have had a tape or something and then you hear it and so people come back and find it, and you can just be happy that that's happening and allow it to happen, or you can sort of still be running your brand. So when they come knocking, you can, like the Misfits, there was a lot of years of fighting before they were able to license that logo to Spencer's Gifts and actually make money off of it, or Hot Topic and make money off of it. Whereas people were just bootlegging it before. Like I have everything that I owned of the Misfits prior to the 90s was bootlegged. Like so, they didn't make it. Somebody else made it, and it took them a long time to get a hold of their intellectual property. It might turn some people into like money bags holding Gene Simmons characters. Like we all kind of, not all, but a lot of people look at Jerry Only that way and Glenn Danzig that way. They'll sue you if you do this or that or the other. They're out to like, but there is an element of like, I made that. I'd like to protect it and keep track of where it goes. Pumpkin Guts, do you all think about that in any kind of way at all? Like the future of like some kid in 2072 finds a Pumpkin Guts t-shirt in a toxic dump and they start licensing it to the Hot Topics and Taco Bell.
I mean, like, I don't know. We have always got like more plans all the time for stuff. Like I would say we have a 5-year plan currently for Pumpkin Guts, like things that we're planning to do and whatever.
I'm like four albums in planned already.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Like ideas. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I'm a very like try to just be in the moment kind of person, but I don't know. Like if there are still people decades from now finding interest in us, that would be pretty cool.
Absolutely. I think it's better to be in the moment. Your art's going to be more real. I think when we're not in the moment, I always fear that I'm going to land somewhere in the era of Kiss or something that's kind of a joke where I'm just trying to please the fan. You know what I mean? I'm just up here dancing for you guys. I got glittery pants on now. Like that's not me. I think when you're really thinking too much about it, you're not putting your heart and soul into it, but it is also something that we are trading in trademarks and brands and identities and concepts and all of that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting thing to watch out for. So,
yeah, well, the biggest thing that Pretty has done is a cover of that down to Goblin Town from the animated Hobbit.
Yeah.
And that's I will never with anything I ever do will never touch the popularity of that song. And the funny thing is, it's not even the horror punk dudes that it's like these Viking metal guys that are all into it. It's
That's
like
awesome.
this wasn't even. It's like there's this whole power metal crowd that just go listen to that song. They don't listen to the other music. It's just that one particular thing. It's
Well,
like this
so
isn't
that
what I meant to
similar
do.
question, do you think about selling specifically to that audience? Does that creep in? Does the urge to make money creep in and you go, well, Pretty with the Lights Out could absolutely switch into ale rock?
Like no, it was just a fluke. Like I think it's just the subject matter of that, just because of the goblin shit or whatever, or the being a Tolkien thing. I don't know, but yeah, it's just it happened to land in that one specific genre, and it was a fluke. I didn't mean to. I couldn't reproduce it if I tried.
That's super funny. I kind
But
of go ahead, Olive.
I was just gonna say, like, the thing that I always say to people if when they ask me about like, about like us making money and stuff like that, I always say that if I was doing this to make money, I would be doing something else.
Yeah,
you
there's no
know,
money.
Yeah, what Nate said earlier, we spend money. This is like
yeah,
Yeah.
this is not something that yeah, it's one in a million artists who are able to do the kind of stuff that we all do and have it just pay for their grease paint or their
yeah,
fingernail polish, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, that acoustic show was the first time I didn't have to pay anybody else. Like usually I get that door money. It's like, all right, here's money for the people that came and played that show with me. And that was the first time I got a hold of it. And then my wife took it.
Well,
So
of
I still
course.
didn't get it. But there's no money. And there's especially no money above the fifth fret, as they always say. Uh so
Right.
any kind of guitar solos and any of that stuff, can't do it there. So
Yeah, it's wild. But there's so much stuff that does break through and like, Wednesday 13 is an enormous I mean they're not playing arenas or anything, but like I played with when they were in a band called Frankenstein Drag Queens from Planet 13. I played with them all the time. And I would never have guessed that human being and that set of songs would make it into an almost Misfits level of like popularity, respect, ability to constantly tour. So there is a weird ceiling that can be broken where
yeah.
the band can suddenly somehow get lucky enough and it's never what you think it is. My former band Cricket Bows, we got a song of ours in like a major motion picture that's on Netflix currently. Our song, they play our entire song during like the training montage in this movie. And we saw like that song got like 1,000 plays on Spotify after that or whatever. We're always seeing weird
That's
plays on that
awesome.
song. But it's like, but it was not, I was like, okay, guys, this is it. Get ready. The guy that wrote Tommy Boy wrote a movie and put our band song in it. We're going to be huge. No, we weren't huge, but there was no, like once we did get paid to have our song in the movie, but once again, like Nate said, it was, well, I'll just be fully transparent. I got $2,000 to put a song in a movie, which is like the most I've ever been paid for rock and rolling. And but the company I used to place the song took 1,000 straight out. So I got 1,000. And now I've got 5 people on the song that I have to pay. We all got paid, but we all got paid basically what we would normally get paid individually, but we got paid what the band would have gotten to play a show each, just a couple $100 each, which is fantastic. I'm not at all like balking at it, but it was not the start of the big things.
Yeah.
So it's like you never can, like, you just got to keep working it and keep your stuff out there and try and be you. And I think for all of us to really keep our hustle up and to keep trying to top ourselves, like I have to think outside of me and think about like, can I make somebody's jaw drop? Can I make somebody go, wow, what is that? And like that's how far I try to think about it. But yeah.
Yeah, you never know what's gonna land. Like my buddy, he landed a song on a video game, Wreckfest.
Yeah.
And by the time that they had, I don't even remember how the story of how they got it on there. By the time that the game had been put out, and then they started getting like a lot of they had made a music video for that particular song. By the time is on the game, the band had basically broken up, and then people start going to that YouTube videos, their music videos, hundreds of thousands of views, and people are coming like, I'm here because of Wreckfest, here because of Wreckfest. It's like, shit, like,
Yeah.
And then he's got no way to capitalize on that because he didn't have access to the YouTube account anymore or anything. It's like, well, okay. So yeah, you never know what's going to land. So
yeah, you can look, if you were able to look back through my career, you'd see all the times that I get the old band back together. It's because some little thing happens. Here's the Jackalopes. We end up in a video game or something like that. The band's back together
yeah,
all of a sudden, and then now we're not. No, we're not. Never mind. And then up, we're back. Somebody else likes us. We heard one person in Germany listen to us last week.
we're going to re-record this song in German.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we got a huge following in Europe. At least 4 people have seen us. Okay. We're getting close to the hour mark. You all have been fantastic. I like to wrap it up by doing some like rapid fire questions at the end that can kind of make it fun, quick answers. Some of them might take some thought. In the future, for those of you out there in the listening audience, we would like to source these questions from you, the listening audience. So please DM us, write to us, and send us questions to use for this segment. In the meantime, we're going to use questions submitted by our good friend ChatGPT 4.0. ChatGPT wants to know if your music could haunt one location forever, where would it be and why? Pumpkin Guts.
You answered that. I think I know your answer. So
You think you know my answer? What do you think my answer is?
I'm just gonna tell you if I'm wrong.
I mean, like, if our music could haunt one location forever, probably the space where we practice at, because I feel like that's where we play the music at the most. That just seems like the most likely place. So, like, in my mom's basement.
I was wrong.
That's awesome. What do you say, Werewolf?
Like my answer, or what I thought Olive's answer was.
Both.
I could have sworn Olive would have said, like, I don't know, like somehow Alvin Schwartz's graveyard. Like just over like a loudspeaker in the I don't know. Shoot, I don't know. That's a hard one. Pass. I don't know.
No problem. Hey, the band practice space in Mom's basement is really perfect. That's
we'll just
that makes sense. Nate, what do you think? Where would Pretty's music haunt forever and why?
Probably this bit. My basement studio here is in fact haunted. There's lots of stories here, but I might go haunted mansion at Disneyland. That's just it's a real special place for my whole family. So I'd like it just lingering around there. That'd be fun.
That's a super good answer. And the vibe's right. The vibe's totally right. I could see being in line in there, waiting in the foyer or whatever, and having some Pretty with the Lights Out pop on out of nowhere.
Disturbing children. Make it even worse for them going in there.
I think so. So Nate, which horror character do you think would secretly be a fan of your band, and what track would be their favorite?
Oh, shit. You know what? I gotta go with Frankenstein's monster and We Belong Dead, because it is very introspective of his feelings and his misadventures. So I'm gonna go there. Yeah.
Do you think Frankenstein is the most emo monster?
Yeah.
He's so misunderstood.
Yeah, he's got a little teardrop coming down his eye.
Obviously, Dracula's a bigger MCR fan, but I think Frankie's a bigger emo. Pumpkin Guts, which horror character do you think would secretly be a fan of your band, and what track would be their fave?
Probably Ruby from Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You know, the clown with the red hair.
I love it. I love it.
And I would say probably Slime would be his favorite.
Fantastic.
Uh, the witch from the Wizard of Oz. Because we sing. I mean, I feel like we have a whole thing about witches and stuff. So, and then
Our unreleased song.
probably our unreleased song. It's literally about witches or a witch. So
Awesome. So Pumpkin Guts, if you got so huge, you got that Misfits hugeness we were talking about, and you had to design a horror themed music festival that you're headlining or co-headlining, what's the first band, dead or alive, that you would book to headline alongside you?
I mean, like, does it have to be a band that's already real big, or like
No.
no? Okay,
Any
well then
band.
it would definitely be the Jasons.
Awesome. That's a good show. Nate.
I feel like we established this.
It's Guar. It's Guar.
But it'd be like 90s Guar, though.
Okay.
Like,
Well, that'd be kind of
yeah.
hard to do right now.
Yeah. You
What about
did say
an
dead or
AI
alive.
An AI Brocky.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you are a programmer. You need to design the AI Brocky.
I don't think anybody could even AI couldn't recreate his just quick. Man was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Manic and compulsive and brilliant.
Yeah. His off the
which I
cuff
think
stuff
is
out of control.
So many people in our scene have a little bit of that genetic. Sticking with you, Nate, imagine a horror director asks you to score their next film. Which director would you want to work with, and what kind of vibe would you bring to the soundtrack?
Oh, shit. I don't know. I think I guess I got to go with Craig, because I don't like horror movies past the year 1999. So
Okay.
I got to go with Craven, just because Nightmare and Scream is the last thing I really thought was good, the first one. So I got to go with Craven, I think. And vibe, Pretty really only has one vibe.
Well, you and Craven, you'd bring the metal back to Craven. Yeah. I mean, that guy did Shocker, and he had so much metal in his movies for a moment there, and then none.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with there.
Pumpkin Guts. I feel like you all should absolutely do a Tim Burton movie, but we're talking directors here. Obviously, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie would be great for you guys, but we're talking director. What director would you work with, and what's the vibe for the soundtrack?
Well, definitely, I would want to work with Tim Burton as a director. Like, and I think our vibe is pretty like creepy, whimsical, sort of. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I think that's a good descriptor. Creepy, whimsical.
Yeah.
That's a whole ass Pinterest board. You know that.
It's like a ghost on a merry-go-round.
That's exactly right. All right. So last of my rapid fire chat GPT questions. And again, you out there listening, you need to send us some questions so I don't have to rely on the robots. But Pumpkin Guts, if your band could communicate with the spirit world, which legendary musician would you invite to collaborate on a track, and what would the song be about?
Oh my God, my brain stopped working. What is that blues singer who sold his soul to Satan at the crossroads?
Robert Johnson.
Yeah, that's who I would want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we could write a like weird like punk pop blues infused song about meeting Satan.
I'm here for it. I need this to happen. Nate, what do you got? If you could communicate with the spirit world, who would you invite to collab on a track, and what would that song be?
All right, listen. One of my favorite guitarists of all time is Daisy Berkowitz from Marilyn Manson, who unfortunately deceased. I'd probably go him. He brought a lot of my guitar influences is him, just this kind of like controlled chaos. And I would just let him everything he wrote was brilliant back in the early Manson days. So I'd let him do it, and I'd just sit and watch. I don't even need to participate. I just
I too am a Daisy Berkowitz man myself, and Daisy absolutely is responsible for all of the good Marilyn Manson music. And after Daisy leaves, there's not really any good Marilyn Manson music anymore. So
For sure.
I would argue that Daisy is a very important part of that. And I think that Pretty with the Lights Out has such a heavier vibe. I'm surprised you said that because he's got such a like Telecaster. Uh, Trebly kind of tone,
Yeah.
but like that would actually probably fit perfectly well in the space of your music because you have so much bottom end sort of taken care of there that he'd have room to kind of do that
Yeah, like
razor blade.
yeah, him and my other favorite guitarist, Balsac, the Jaws of Death from Guar. They have this way of like making a guitar not sound like a guitar. Uh,
Yeah.
and I like that. So, I've never wanted to try to really force doing it. If I find something where like I want to have that element come in, it's definitely going to be because of those two, like those influences. But
Do you guys, this is totally off of my rapid fire. Do you guys, when you record, do you experiment at all? I'm really into experimenting. I grew up into the Beatles. All of the Beatles stories are like, oh, it was the wrong speed, so they slowed it down, sped it up, ran it backwards. They put a microphone in, or the Led Zeppelin stuff. They put a microphone in the stairwell, and that's the whole drum sound. Do you guys experiment with like stuff like that, or do you think about doing anything like that? There's another I watch production videos by this producer Sylvia Massey. She like produced everybody, but she's most famous for producing Tool, I guess. But like she wanted a heavier drum sound on this particular Tool record, so she thought maybe if we shoot a piano with a shotgun and then I'll sample that sound and use that for the snare drum. Like that's or she'll run a guitar, she'll run a guitar through a pickle. Like the guitar will like go into a power amp and then into
yeah,
a pickle and then out of a pickle or a potato and into the thing and it sounds just terrible. Do you guys try weird stuff or think about weird stuff like that at all?
I don't. My stuff's all fairly straight, just because of the recording advancements we have these days, where we don't have to use a potato. It's like, okay, I've got my interface here, and we're gonna plug in. Anything, the way that I do Pretty Tracks is I just, because I'm self-producing it as well, I just try to make sure the last one is, or the next one is better than the last one in some way. So any kind of experimenting that goes on, like you can generally tell of like where I learned about, not like necessarily learned about, where it's like one track where I'm playing with a lot of stereo effects of like bouncing stuff back and forth between different channels. So that's as far as I get into it.
Sure. No, but in the audio workspace, you're playing with
Yeah.
with things for sure. Do you guys record everything yourselves, Pumpkin Guts, or do you guys go to the studio?
No, we've never been in a studio. The majority, like our first EP was all recorded in my mom's living room. Everything after that has either been recorded in our house or at our bassist's house. So yeah, we just do it all ourselves.
Yeah, we'll do like a lot of times I'll just record like a demo track of just scratch guitars and stuff and bad drums, and we'll send it over to the Void's house, and he will then re-record most of the guitars and do all the drums. He pretty much does the entire situation, like everything musically with it, and then we'll get back together and do the vocals, and then that's where like the experimenting will come in. Like, we don't do crazy stuff, but like we'll have the idea like in the background to do like
The
like
sound of a match striking.
yeah, we have a song with the sound of a match striking, but like just musically though, like pianos just banging. Like
Yeah.
we've been doing that a lot lately. So if you listen really deep, like in our new stuff when it's finally out, like you'll hear a lot of like pianos. That's
Layered in.
yeah.
We do that too. I stole that from the Stooges. Ding 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 ding.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Yeah,
I need to
love it.
start banging on piano. I don't
Oh
know about
man.
this trick.
Bury it in there, just one, that song's in D, just hit that D note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great, but that is experimentation. That's like you're
Yeah.
finding it. And with all of us recording our own stuff and not going into the studio, we're really all experimenting. None of us went to school to do this or anything like that. So I think that, we're all kind of carving our own path, which is really super cool. I hope that more bands in the scene move toward creating their own stuff. A lot of people do. But I hope that more do. There's a lot of bands spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars to release singles and stuff that they really don't need to spend, or they could spend a little bit of that money up front on their own MacBook and an
Yep,
interface and
for sure.
everything that I've done for the Creepy Crawlers has been done with stuff that I had in my kit for my tattoo shop. My Mac, my everything that I had was for my day job basically. And so we've spent only time, no money in our recordings. And I think it's awesome to be able to be that much in control. I again, old guy stuff. I came from a time we would go to a studio and it was $50 an hour, and we recorded on ADATs, which were these big VHS tape things, and then that would go to a DAT tape, which was a little tape that doesn't play on anything but a DAT player, and then that would get mailed somewhere where they would send us a CD master back, and then we have to mail that CD master somewhere to get duplicated, and it would take us a year to put out something, and that was so hard as an artist to like sit on everything. I love now that like you all could have an idea to do a crazy cover and have it up by the next weekend. And
Yeah, that's I've done it.
that's
Yep.
it's fantastic. And it's I think we should all be doing that kind of stuff and just cranking more stuff out. Obviously maybe with the labels, Horror Shock, We Are Horror, any of the different labels we all work with, maybe we saved back special stuff for them to put out or whatever. But like, man, we all need to be cranking the material out and just keep it coming. If it's coming out of you, put it out. Don't sit on it. Don't hold it back, because like we all found out during the pandemic, like stuff can go sideways in an instant, and then you're sitting there. I lost a whole band during the pandemic. My previous band just fell apart, and it was real terrible. So it's nice to just get it out while you got it. And I love that you guys are doing that, and that you all are upholding the DIY spirit of punk rock and everything you do. Keep doing it yourself. Keep on mixing the peanut butter and chocolate. And thank you guys all so much for being on here today. I can't wait to play with you all. I hope we have a fantastic crowd. We're hoping to bring some people from our neck of the woods. It's going to be a nice little tri-state concert. Again, that's October 5th at the HoosierDome in Indy. Anything anybody else needs to promote while you're here? You got anything coming out around that time? This podcast will come out, I think, the week prior to the show.
Oh, okay. So, we are working on an EP to put out. We don't have a release date, but it should be out sometime in the next few weeks.
Awesome.
Hopefully it'll be out before then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's called Cats, Corpses, and Other Tales.
Nice one. You got anything new coming out, Nate?
No, I've been mostly on a little bit of a recording hiatus, so I'm gonna get back to it later this year, and I'm kind of almost thinking, with the success of the acoustic side, record some of these songs as acoustic and throw it out there as a little mini acoustic EP, since We Are Horror Records has been bugging me to get something.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I think Dan would dig that too. And it's, Rise From Your Grave is on our label, and those cats are going back and re-recording a lot of their back catalog, just because their band is better now. They've got their recording process down, they got their production down, and a lot of us, we put out our songs and they sit and kind of just rot in digital jail on the internet because we're not pushing them and doing anything with them. So doing like a live version or an acoustic version or something like that, I think is a fantastic idea. And Nate, if you're going to do more of those gigs, I think having a CD of that kind of stuff on your merch table too is really, really smart.
Yeah,
And,
anybody that would have been at that show that bought that CD, which there were a couple, is in for a drastic change of like what
right,
this is
right.
not the same as, and yeah, it's the same songs, but I think they translated well either way. So we'll see. But yeah, definitely going to do more of those shows because they are easier for me to do than having to pay these guys to travel.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think you should. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the backing track shows either, but man, it was really it was powerful even though you say you went out of tune in the set or whatever and couldn't hear it because of the stage
that
volume.
killed me.
I think that just actually in the room it added to it. I always say the good thing about horror punk is when we're out of tune, we just sound more like the Misfits. So I think it sounded like a choice to me.
My top string
So-
betrayed me. Yeah.
Yeah, but all good. Well, everybody, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you at the show. And everybody, go check out their Spotify's and YouTubes and Facebooks and Instagrams, and find them where you can find them. I'll try to remember if I can with my ADHD addled brain to put links in the description and stuff. But if I don't, we're all very, very searchable in today's modern age. Pumpkin Guts, Pretty with the Lights Out. Thank you all so much. I will see you guys in Indy.
It's alive! Enter the shock pod at your own risk.
Presented by Horror Shock Media. This is a horror punk and shock rock podcast hosted by Reverend Chad Wells.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks.